So a theme that the chief apostles brought up in the last couple of years here and there is about blessing. That's a term that we have had probably most of our lives here and there, and sometimes I think it's even used as currency. You know, if you come and do this, you'll get a blessing, as if it's a token or it's a reward or whatnot. But what do you have to say about blessing and our understanding of that? Is it something that can be earned?
No. I think we really have to look at that closely and maybe even step away from former understandings of that. Blessing is an action of God, and you can't make God act. You can't force him into it. You can't negotiate with him. You can't bargain with him. He acts as he will. And blessing, in a very nice way, according to what our chief apostle defined once, is any action of God that opens the way to bring you closer to him.
So it's not necessarily a material increase, of material things, a car or a house or anything like that. It could be. It could be. But that's not how you count it.
Yeah. That's it's funny. We have the song "Count Your Blessings One by One."
Right.
And it's not. You can't count them by the good things that you think are good in life, or material things in life.
Yeah.
The Lord can allow that, and it can give that. But on the other side, he also allows things to happen in our life that are difficult.
Does the qualification for it to be a blessing, based on the definition you just gave, only happen if it actually brings us closer to God? Meaning, something bad happens in my life. There's the opportunity for that to bring me closer to God, in which case I'd be like, oh, that was a blessing. But if it doesn't, if it pushes me further from God.
Yeah, well, that was a choice you made.
Yeah.
The beauty of it is the occurrence happens.
Yeah.
You have the choice now. Will I allow this to bring me closer to God? And if one lives through it, even struggles through it, let's say, and then at the end they look back and say, you know what, I learned a lot in this, and this did bring me closer to God. If one goes the other way, then it's not a blessing, but you chose it not to be a blessing.
So the opportunity was always there.
It goes with the struggling for blessing.
Yeah, which brings up Jacob. There's a story in Genesis 32. He was wrestling with this godly being, it says, and even the godly being, paraphrasing, says, let me go. He goes, I'm not going to let you go until you bless me. Like, is it wrong to want that desire? In which case it kind of sounds like he's trying to earn it. He's trying to gain it as if it's earnable, I guess.
Yeah. We want it. Of course we want God's blessing because we want to be closer to him. So to struggle for it, but there's no earning it and there's no deserving it. There's no entitlement to it. It's just by God's grace, and one can struggle and strive for it, and that's what he did. He realized, I want to be closer to God. I want to receive from him something. And then the Lord granted it to him. In unusual ways, actually, in his life, through various things that happened in his life. It was quite unusual. But when we look at now, we have the nice chance to look at in retrospect, reading the whole history of this guy. We see, wow, the Lord really did bless him in a lot of different ways.
Just the word blessing and blessed being like a condition of, receiving blessing also points to like the Beatitudes. It talks about like blessed, are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, and so on in Matthew 5. Is it kind of a chicken and the egg thing? Like, if you're blessed, you'll be poor in spirit, or because you're poor in spirit, you'll be blessed? Are we always in God's blessing all the time as his children, and it's up to us to find that awareness?
Well, it is, you can look at the Beatitudes different ways, but I think a nice thing to realize from the Beatitudes is Jesus is already giving an indication now of a shift. In the Old Testament, oftentimes, like for instance when they saw David was fighting his enemies and he won the battles, you see God's blessing is with him. Or when something good happened to the Israelites, you see the blessing of God is there. Now Jesus is showing us a different way. It's not all good things that happen, and that doesn't mean that you are close to God if you are healthy or wealthy, and now you can sit back and say, oh, you see, God blessed me, and that means he must love me more than the next guy who's poor. It doesn't work. Jesus is showing us, no, there's another way of blessing here. And this idea of struggling, sometimes it means that we accept what God puts in our life, and we struggle through that to realize if God allowed it, then he must be blessing me in some way, because his motive is to bring me closer to him. So I must look in that direction and struggle with that.
Yeah. And something you kind of highlighted there, it's not really our position, or something you said, it's not really our position to indicate who is and who isn't blessed.
No, we don't know it.
We couldn't know it based on
No.
it being something that would bring people closer to God.
Right.
Yeah.
And one can't even say that of themselves, that I'm more blessed than you are. That would be silly to think that. It's by God's grace. We want to have it, and we should struggle for it, but always see it as God's ways are not to make us successful in life. It can happen, but what he wants for us is to be with him. And we must always remember that, because we think sometimes, if things go well in my life, or I'm healthy, or everything comes together in the way that I was hoping it would, you see, God is with me. And that's the wrong understanding. We have to see God is with us always, and he always wants us to be with him. And that means sometimes we will have to struggle and suffer, but Jesus Christ did that, and God's never spared him from anything. How could we even feel entitled to say, God, you should spare me from this suffering and from these things, when he didn't do that for his own son?
His son asked for it, but because there was a bigger picture in mind, that wasn't allowed. So, no, I think that's good. Blessing isn't always material, always equated to material things. We can't earn it. And ultimately, it's whatever brings us closer to God, even if our human understanding, it could be a good thing, or what we see even as a bad thing, as long as it has the opportunity to bring us closer to God. That's up to us.
The key is when you just said, at the garden, he asked, is it possible? But then he always came back, but your will be done. Yeah. And when we have this attitude, then we put ourselves into a place that we can receive God's blessing.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Okay, so thank you for joining us on this episode of For Your Journey. If you have any suggested questions or topics for future discussion, you can find us on Facebook or Twitter. And this has been For Your Journey.